Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. My name is Ben Maldonado. We're recording here on Friday, the 26th of April, about an hour before the close. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good.
Looks
It's
like the ES is pulling back here to potentially make a lower high.
Yep,
I
that's
don't
what it
want to
looks like.
anticipate, but it kind of looks like that's happening. Well, today's show we're going to cover ES as Barry always does, along with bonds, gold, crude oil, copper, the dollar, and the euro. And today on the commodity side, we had the grains kick into gear, so I'm going to go over wheat and corn, along with an update on a couple other longs we've been in for weeks now, and that's coffee and silver. So
Mhm.
without any further ado, let's dive into the ES and see what's most likely to happen from here.
Yeah, let's take a look. I mean, this is really catching everything midstream.
Right.
You know, I mean, we had a corner up here, we had a corner down there, so we're in the middle now.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we get to that middle? Let's go back to the chart that had the best traction, all through here, this through this leg and
Your
finishing it up.
calendar day chart, right?
Yes, calendar day is
Mm-hmm.
the cash chart, SPX. And so we had the high come in, squared out, and we were looking for some kind of a correction, and we got it. Well, it found support exactly at the 50% of the square.
Which is beautiful from a geometry standpoint.
It just, it's exactly what you want,
Right.
right? And now we are mounting some kind of a rally off of that. So that's what I meant when I said we're kind of midstream. If you take a look at that square,
Mm-hmm.
you can see like four divisions. These gray lines. I don't know if you can see it.
You're the half of the half.
Yeah, it's half of the half is exactly where we are. So basically, a 50% correction,
Mm-hmm.
based on the square. And of course, this is where all the questions come up. Oh my God, 50%. What happens next? Are we going to break through and go on higher? Or are we going to turn around and go down? And all these questions show up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at how the ES moves, and if you take these divisions, yeah, we're up a quarter of the square, of the square of 72. And if you take, if you take the eights, these are the gray lines. Normally, S&P likes to, correct about 3/8. So here we have a quarter, and 3/8 would come somewhere around 51.67.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it looks a little off because I went 3/8 from the low here. That's why it's off exactly the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 51.67 is sort of the max or the ideal place you'd want it to tire out,
Yeah, roll over.
roll over and finish it. Now, if we get above 51.67, I mean, of course, we can go super high and turn around, or super high and just break through and go on into a new high. But this is really the indicator where you cross the line. You want
Mm-hmm.
to look at 51.67 and see, any kind of stalling below that would indicate, lower prices generally if we're going lower. And if we somehow get on top of it, we have to it's like a caution. We have to wait to see what happens. We're going to make a higher, lower high and consolidate or whatever happens next. But whatever happens, we want to key off of 51.67.
And that's cash basis, right?
This is cash basis. And
Mm-hmm.
and right now we're well below that. So meaning there's a little bit of room to run. So that's kind of where we are. We're waiting to see where we're going to reverse. So if you're trading based on the daily, you want to look at the next reversal.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to see today's low get taken out. That would give us the reversal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the price back on April 19th, we came down exactly half a square, and we called that out. Not only here, but also in real time. And
Mm-hmm.
and we
At
were looking,
night.
and then at night, which is
Right.
unusual.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, no, we were paying attention because, we knew what we had a cycle date and we knew we were
Yeah,
squaring out on some certain time frames. So you got to pay attention when those things happen, whether it's middle of the night or not.
I mean, trading gives you a lot of flexibility, but you got to be on top when it's time.
Yep.
And I mean, I normally don't post at night, but that night we did because it
I
was,
remember you and I, we didn't know each other. We're online and we both ended up posting
yeah, about the same. That's
about
true.
the same time.
And after that, then we started talking about it,
Yeah,
right?
right. Then we got on the phone and started talking. Yep.
So, and there was a reason why we were posting because that we were at, 50% of the square. It was a good support level. It came in on a couple of different levels. So, and that's the reason. And then, of course, the following day we got a reversal and a higher low, and here we are. And I want to key off of this cash chart because that's the one that really accurately called out the high. So let's just ride that till,
Hmm.
if it phases out, if that's what has to happen. In the meantime, here's the Dow, and what's happening here is, we had 144 was support coming off the low back in October, and we held here. Yeah, we had
Yep.
one day slip through. It was really checking these lows, and it was higher than those lows. Got up higher, and that one pullback, we held about 144. So this is it's okay. It's actually holding up pretty well.
Hmm.
Now, if we were to do this below 144, then I would be much more, not just I would be, but the market would be in a much more bearish position, right?
Hmm.
Kind of like what we did here. We stalled out at the 50% square,
And got
corrected,
stuck under. Yep.
did an A, B, C, D back up, under, below, we couldn't really do much, and then we rolled over and sold off. So it's very similar here. Instead of getting stuck below 144, we are holding above 144. So that's something to note. I always watch the Dow, see what it's doing, and holding above here. So to me, it's a little bit of a caution flag. Like, okay, it's not as weak as we might think, and we want to watch that. And here's the futures chart and what happened here. Again, the same score 144. This is a trading day chart. What do we had? We had 108 by 144. We squared out,
Hmm.
came back down, pretty much the same square. We had
Hmm.
49.46 as really strong support. We got very close to that, and we rallied up above 5104. So last week we talked about. I mean, last few weeks we were talking about 5104, and how that's sort of a key point, a pivot point, because as you can see on my daily, there's nothing above that for another 100 points.
Sure.
And, that gives us some space. And when we broke 5104, we talked about, support being 50% of the square, or 49.46 is really the next level I had. And it basically went there. And 5104, the deal here is, we didn't really get stuck under it. We managed to, play around a little bit. Buyers came in and we got on top of it. So today's low was just above that,
Hmm.
like on our 30-minute chart, I had 5110 as a level on the 30-minute chart, but here 5104, you can see we managed to hold above it. So this is, if you're going to read the chart, holding above that is not negative. If we were trying to get above it and get stuck under that, that would be negative. So that sort of opens up a little bit more. And this is where the 3/8 idea on the cash is the second thing to watch, because we can measure that movement in degrees of the square.
Hmm.
So for now, I'm looking at this as, yeah, we did a counter trend, and looking at the size of it, you saw on the cash chart, we went quarter of a square, fairly normal. If we were really weak, we might not even do a 1/4, 1/8 counter trend. We would just sell off. So we're not in that kind of a panic mode, clearly, right? So we came down, we are up quarter of a square. 3/8 seems like the level. So that's how we got this, the number 5167
Hmm.
basis the cash. We were watching that. And same, it's pretty much the same deal on the futures. We want to watch 5104. At this point, long as we're above that, we have to watch it and wait for a reversal and wait to see where we stall out.
Right. How
So,
high we
but
can go.
yes, we want to
Hmm.
watch that. And it might be close to 5200 because, we do have a lot of freedom of movement here. If you
Hmm.
notice going back, we're very quick to move through. I mean, last time here, in 2 days, we were there. We
Hmm.
covered that 100 points in 2 days. So could we do that again? I don't know, but we know this area is kind of free flowing, and the part under that, you can see how fast we got there. There's no whole lot of consolidation that happens when it gets past these levels. So that's the thing to watch. Before I get on to the other weekly and whatnot, do you have anything to add to this, Ben?
It's interesting you got the same numbers because I'm just looking at like 5170 to 5190
Mm-hmm.
was you can see the structural resistance right in there.
Right.
And that also is right in the neighborhood of where a big ABCD goes to.
Okay.
So
And the
off
other
that
thing is
low.
till we get, because of the way the market's set up, the way the momentum is set up, really up until we get above, I would say 5,200 here, we're not, we
Hmm.
don't have that momentum that we had on behind us before on this leg. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
we really need to, this is, yeah, we're pumping up pretty hard, but it's just quite not there. I think it's going to get reeled in if we can get above 5,200 or so, maybe a
Hmm.
little below. But you can see this 5,200 was there for a long time. I think before this part of the market came in, actually, even in this part, 52,
Yeah, it was
that,
you had that in there before for
right?
sure
And you can see how we stalled there for a few days before we
on the
broke
way
through.
down. Hmm.
So it makes sense that we get, like you said, you had your structure about 5,190. So
Hmm.
in that area is where we're looking. And that is critical. When we get there, you'll see it's really we need to get above settle above that in order for momentum to kick in for it to do more if it has to do more. So I'll stop that there. Let's take a look at the
The weekly
30-minute chart.
30.
Um, all
Been
right,
working nicely.
it's working beautifully.
Hmm.
From the high, April high, 360 down on the 30-minute, that gave us the low. That's the one we just talked about calling out in the middle of the night.
Mm. Sunday
And
night or no, Thursday night, the 18th. Yep.
right. And then we started to make higher lows. First we was 50-10 that we were watching. And you can see we made higher lows right through there.
Hmm.
50-40 we were watching, got through there. 50-58 got through there. And then the next level was really this band with 51-27 being the extreme. And we stalled there and of course corrected almost back to 50-10. And on good earnings and whatnot, we rally back up. So here's 5104 that we talked about earlier. You can see how today, on that little downdraft, we held right above that. And this is how, getting back to trading, this is how you use that. If the market comes down there and it stalls, and following that stall, you get a buy signal or buy setup. Well, there's a higher probability that it's going to work out. Makes sense, right?
Absolutely.
And that's how you guys can use these levels. And then I wrote that, market looks exhausted around 51.27, and it's a little above that and it's holding.
Hmm.
We'll see how it goes. But this, we're the place we're stalling is really 180 degrees down from the high. 51.62 level is really it's there's a band in here that
Hmm.
is really the next level of resistance. And mainly I'm drawing this because it's the 180. And when it gets to 180, either we're going to stall here exactly where the high is, or we'll try to poke our head above a little bit, and then either settle above that, or sellers would come in and teach them what to do. So
Correct. Yep.
right. And anyway, the one thing to notice is after the downdraft started, you can see here we tried for a couple of days to get back on top, couldn't, sold off. Tried here, couldn't do it, sold off. So now, just like I showed you guys in the Dow, how it was a little bit stronger, and how on the daily, clearly we're holding above 5104. We're able to hold about this zone here, 120 to 127. So long as it's up here, yeah, we have a lot of resistance here, but you really have to be a little bit cautious, let it work itself out. And if it's going down, well, obviously cutting through 150-120 to the downside is really, that's where you'd want to watch to see if that holds or not. If it doesn't, after this run and this sort of second run, if it fails, it's going to fail. But long as we're above 51.20, especially 5104, and I mentioned these both sets of price, and if you're wondering, like, well, which one is it? Well, you can think of it as 5104 being major support, and this 5120, 27 zone, just like what it's been. You can see how, we got in there, zone, chop, and then we sold off, came back. Here we spent like an entire night stuck in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how those zones work. Price will get in there and stay in the zone as if it's sort of trapped. But the whole thing has like a big buffer. So it's hard to pick one line here. So that's why I draw the zone. So if it's above 51, 2027 area, then, it's strong. Even though there's resistance, we're not, at 5130, we're not quite at resistance. So it's got room. And the way you handle it is, if you got a long signal, well, you have a little bit more left to go. And you know where the cutoff is if it turns back down below 5120. So that's just a quick how-to. Did that make sense?
Yes, it did.
Is that okay? All right. Let's move on to the
Weekly.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about buyers stepping in.
Yeah.
So weekly last week, looking at the weekly chart, I talked about being down for 3 weeks, and 3, 5, 7, and I talked about that and said, well, it's probably time for some kind of a counter trend.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, we got it. We took out last week's high. So, technically we have a reversal in place. And that's why we really want to watch those numbers along the top that we talked about. We want to see if 3/8 holds it or not. If it doesn't, we really want to back off and wait to see what the next setup winds up to be. And this is why we kind of watch different levels and, have them act like, I don't know, what would be like a scale, right? Heavier weight, the higher the number, for example, the stronger it is. If we take out one or two pegs, then it's weaker, and at some point it would turn down. So we use those numbers to sort of balance out the price movement. So for now, we started we have one bar up. Let's see if we're going to continue to 2 weeks, which would get us right into your May time frame.
Sure.
Perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it looks like we could do that. So let's watch it. If it doesn't, then we're going to get into some kind of a choppy inside bar or some other setup here.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like it's very strong. And like today, the internals were looking good. So maybe that's what's happening.
And maybe that gives us that last final push. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. And we know the time. We know it's, early May,
Mm-hmm.
first week of May, maybe towards the end of first week of May. Well, beginning
9th,
of second
10th,
week.
yeah.
Yeah,
9th,
beginning of
10th.
second week,
Mm-hmm.
around that time. So we'll watch that, and we'll watch the pricings. For now, yeah, above 5104, you have to give it some respect.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't knock yourself out trying to sell it above that level. Bonds came down to half the square. It's a square 90, and it's stuck below. I think bonds are still weak. And well, I would say play the short side. Could we get some kind of a bounce? Well, if we get above the 50% of the square, which would be like 14.5, sure, we could expect something. As long as we're below that, it's definitely on weak legs. So
I think that's a great number. That 14.5 is a good sort of bull bear line short term,
Okay. The other thing I noticed is, we've had these lines forever. And if you draw that out a bit.
Look at that right there.
Right. So we're getting very close to that. So it's possible that we balance on that and get to the upper part of the range. But you can see the whole channel, though, is pointing not up.
Not up, no.
So trade cautiously. All right. So that's that. Let's look at the bonds. We did finally get to the weekly bonds. We finally got to 216 weeks.
Yep.
Being down. It's a hell of a thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's a lot of movement. What are we doing here? Well, we're 144 down by 216. I'm a little bit, I really want to watch this. Now, if we didn't have this low come prior, I would really be looking for this to square out and maybe some kind of a counter trend
Hmm.
before we turn back down again. But because since this is broken, I don't know if we're going to go down to 180, you know, um, on the same run. So let's watch it. Let's watch and here I can't really call anything because we're exactly at 114. Yeah, we're a couple,
Right.
a few ticks off, but we're right there. So not much to say. Let's see. We can use Friday. We can use this week and see, if we break above this week, we can expect, maybe a little bit of a correction before turning
Hmm.
back down again. And if we take out the low this week, clearly we're going, we're going to take these lows out. So I think we can watch it like that.
Hmm.
We're good.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. And another market that's taking a little bit of a breather.
And yeah, look how that half square basically called the breather, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tried multiple times to get above it, couldn't. So it said,
Couldn't
okay,
do it.
let's
Yeah.
rest for a while.
And then we just, scraping through this 83 level, had a little bit of a buffer, it really got stopped in there. Now we're slowly making higher lows. We managed to get above 83. So that's, it's the same game. We have these numbers and it's really about if we can sort of hold above 83. I think next try, we could probably take out the half square,
Hmm.
which is about 87, right?
Yep.
And we're well above our trend line. So it even has more time to consolidate before we get to the trend line. So above 83, we've always said, it's in a firm position. It could just impulse out of there. So yeah, I would say stick to the long side. If you get the long side
Yeah.
setups, it's just short side is a little too risky.
Hmm.
And here is the weekly. Not much. It just looks very normal. We corrected, started running back up. We have a two bars down, basically 2 week correction.
Yep.
And this is why it's important to watch next week to see if we can take out this week's high or this week's low. If we take out this week's high, then probabilities are we're probably going to go trade a little higher. Why? Mainly why? Because we came down to this support level, right? That we've had forever. And we managed to even be a little bit above it. So it looks a little bullish to me. So I think that's the direction to watch. Here's gold. We were looking to see we were watching to see if we could get to the 144 and if the 135 square that came in was not quite enough.
And I also have to say, Barry, you did call, expect some sort of pause here or some sort of pullback when we were making those highs because we were having trouble getting over that 144.
Yeah, look at it. We looked like we hit a brick wall, right? Bam, bam, bam.
And
Really
not
did.
for trying either. It tried a
Yeah.
lot.
Yes, yes, yes. It sure did. And yeah,
Because I remember when we were talking about it last week, we were like, it's probably going to stall out here. And
mhm,
we just don't know what kind of correction, a major price pullback, sideways chop.
mhm.
And we're kind of getting some chop here.
Yeah. So what happened? This is the original one we were watching, right? So
Hmm.
here's that square we thought would be coming in. Well, it
Hmm.
looks like it came in actually now.
Yeah, it did.
And we wanted it to at least get below the 50% of the square, which it did.
Hmm.
And basic move was actually 1/3 of a square, which
Hmm.
are the green dotted line. So it's a normal good correction.
Hmm.
So I think going forward, the key here is, and I switched to the 90 because, well, it seems to be the right one since,
Perfect timing
yeah,
there.
everything lined up. So
Hmm.
144 is for there, sort of a catch in case it slips through 135. So here, 2368 is really the level to watch. If we are below that 50% of the square, I think it's going to continue to sort of consolidate and correct. And if we get above that, well, of course, that opens up that rest of the square, getting us above 2,500, 2,547. So we can say 2,550, right?
Hmm.
And that's a really good, decent trade. So watch for that. In the meantime, let's wait to see how it clears the 50% of the square, 2367.
I mean, and it could pull all the way back to the 90 and still be super bullish.
That would actually be very healthy. And I think it might, that's
Yeah,
the thing.
just
Before
shake the
really
tree.
going,
Hmm.
gold likes to, look at here, like, it messed around, acted like it was doing all these things. Then it really curved down to, wash everybody out before moving
Mm-hmm.
up. So it likes to do that. I mean, here we had a false break before we moved up.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always some kind of a trick that happens. I mean, if you go back to 2022, we had this huge correction and then the false break before we moved up. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
it seems to be part of the character. So that's the level to watch. So now you guys know. Moving on to the weekly. Well,
There's
that's what we really called it.
another reason why we were
Yeah.
saying don't expect too much yet.
Right. And that was, this is a beautiful setup because when the weekly runs into big numbers, big resistance, you want to go to the shorter term, in this case, the daily, and see, do we have a square? Do we have anything to go on that would show us some kind of a termination? And with that square, we found that. That's how we called it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
We weren't just throwing darts. So
No, that's right.
so that's how that worked out. So long as we're below that, the weekly can still correct, but above 25, 22.50, obviously it's in a very strong position, and let it work itself out and wait for the next impulse, I suppose. Moving on to copper.
Copper's been the star this week.
Copper's doing great. And,
Mm-hmm.
like you talk about commodities, had all these sideways. When it starts to move, don't
Yeah.
get in the way,
Yeah.
don't get in the way.
Yep. Get on the train, basically.
Exactly. And the train is moving. So that's that. We're looking, I mean, the next stop is really 482, 480 looks like where it should be going.
Yeah. And look at how it fought at that full square and then was able to sit on top and then it goes. I mean, that's the beauty of these squares. If you can watch them long enough, you see that price action, man, it gives you an edge and the confidence to jump in.
Yes, absolutely. You just have to be patient. I mean, you might have to give it a couple of shots, let's say maybe a couple of entries, but once you get it, it's just the ratio is so in your favor. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean is the stop versus how many times the stop value, the market would go in your favor, right?
Sure.
It's just the risk reward ratio is just wild.
Yep.
Looking at the weekly chart, look what's happening.
It's trying to chew through it.
Yeah, and last week, we did our big Gartley show.
It was it wasn't planned Gartley show either, just turned into the Gartley show.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
We're seeing so many of them, right?
Right.
And well, in that talk, we were talking about how ABCDs, when they have traction, they tend to pull the market up into that. And we joked about here, hey, it might stop at 90, it might get pulled up a little bit more.
Sure.
At least to go up and tap the ABCD. And it looks like, well, at least
it's trying.
It looks, we didn't really, we paused last week right there, but this week we decided to take out the last week's high. Looks good. And we're on track. Next one would be, let's move on to the dollar. Dollar is still taking a breather, but is breathing and resting at the right place. It came out to the square, 30 by 30, squared out. We also had an ABCD come in. So
yeah, but notice it's not pulling back that much. That's a very bullish sign.
Dollar's strong, man. This dollar's not going anywhere. It's very strong. And even with this ABCD, you guys watch what happens after we take these highs out, and settle above this square. So dollar's very strong. And so I would play it that way. I wouldn't pretend that it's weak. All right. So now, the only fly here is that weekly could have completed ABCD up.
Could have. Yep.
And that was a Gartley that we were looking at last week, right? XABC and the D perfectly hitting. And then we talked about, that's why this gray line is here. Last week we talked about how, long as it's above the B, the leg is very strong still, right? So here, long as we're above 105, weekly is still in a strong position. And of course, if we can somehow manage to get above that, we're close to 107. That's really the 107's like the resistance we had prior to this low. We've had that for a few months, I think, if not years. So it looks like we should get up there. If we get up there and we hold above the 50%, we definitely have room to run and possibly, if we clear 50, we can possibly, get into 112. It's not a big deal.
And I
Look at
remember
the
too
base
that
we have here, right? If we
yeah,
once we break. Mhm.
the important thing you mentioned on the show, I think it's worth repeating, is you got to look at where you are when the Gartley comes in, right? And
Mhm.
here we're not at an extreme high or low. You're kind of in the middle of the that last big range.
Right.
So it's less. The word is comes to mind is less dramatic when you have that Gartley because you're not at an extreme.
Yeah, and it's less probable to terminate the entire thing
Correct.
versus if it came up, up at a
Right
high
up
like
there.
up
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
But I've seen like in currencies, we could do a Gartley up to the range and then do a Gartley down to the bottom of the range.
Yeah.
And sometimes, market consolidating can just do Gartleys up and down.
Chop around. Yep.
Yeah, but it's overall it's chop. So,
Hmm.
but here we're watching the levels and watching the weekly trend. Everything looks very positive, and about 105, I would say it's kind of poised in a good way. So,
Hmm.
mhm.
Hong
Let's,
Kong. Let's look at Hong Kong. I know you've been on that one.
yeah,
After you do the Euro, do Hong
okay,
Kong.
yeah, let's do it real quick. Euro, really not much to talk about other than, we're well below 108,
Right.
and hopefully it'll stay that way. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But it did stall out exactly at the 50% of the square here, and we had the little buffer zone of support, and you can see how clearly we came right to that and bounced. And I really, it's weak enough where I really can't see it getting above a quarter of a square. Like 107.7 is really where that stands. So 7.7 to 8 seems like the buffer zone for this correction.
Hmm.
Max being 108. Other than that, I said last week, watch out when this low gets taken out because of the ABCD and it being the half a square.
Sure.
Yep. So, I mean, some of these currencies have been great to trade. Everything's, I mean, the yen and
The yen's been moving like crazy.
yeah, we should do a maybe currency set if we had time, huh? That'd be
Yeah.
fun. Here's the weekly euro. Just like I said, 108. As long as we're below that, it's on weak legs. So looking at the weekly, you guys already know we had a sort of reversal, but there's not a whole lot of stuff on the week basis weekly at the low. And so next week we want to see, are we going to take out the low of
Hmm.
this week or the high of this week? And with the high of last week acting as support. So watch that dynamic, and I think it'll be worth doing.
Yep.
Hang Seng, here we go.
Yeah. Look at that. Stretching its
That's
legs.
yeah, man. This pattern, everything that happened and the way we called it out, everything worked out perfectly. And here's what I mean by that. So we had, market was selling off and we got into the low. We called it out because it terminated, squared out, plus it terminated on the ABCD
Yep.
and quickly ran up, made higher lows immediately, got above the 50% of the square and, pretty respectable. Stayed up here and did this long consolidation. All right.
2 months. Yep.
Yep. And then what gave it away was this little false break.
It false break.
All right. But this was like, I remember this. I remember this because I have some friends that trade some of the stocks in Hang Seng. And, this was like panic time. Oh my God, is it going to go lower? Are we selling off? And and I'm like, no, I don't think so. It's like, we have a false break potentially. So what happened? Gap, 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 boom, boom, boom. And now we're back up. Right. So I
Amazing,
think
huh? How they do
amazing.
that.
And look at that money pouring in, right? So they were all waiting. So it wasn't just us, right? A lot of people saw that come in, and you can see it's very technical. So next stop is really, 1854. If we're going to stall out, it's really 1854 is really the number. It's
Yeah, that 72 is going to be the battle now.
exactly, exactly. So if we can clear that, I think then Hang Seng is cleared. The corrections are all done. If we
Right.
can't clear it, it's not over. Then we might have a little bit more soft stuff to cover. So
Sure.
so I would leave it at that. 1854 is the number to watch,
Okay.
and I'm done. I think.
Very good. Very, very good stuff.
Thanks, Ben. And you got all the good commodities. Let's take a look
Yep.
at that, and I'll put it back to you.
All right. Thanks.
Uh, All right, Ben. We talked about the full square test last week, and here
Yeah.
we are, just like
Yeah.
clockwork.
Yeah. I mean, as you and I were talking, it's banging its head on the ceiling today.
Hmm.
And so we're going to see what the Bulls got, what they want to do, and how strong the Bears are at this point.
And
The
it's I was just going to say, it's the same situation. It's at 50% of the square. We came down full square and
Yep.
we rallied half a square. So we're right there. It's in that weird, like mid
It,
spot.
it's at this 50%, right? And that's for people that do the Fibonacci's, that's a big one. 50% of the previous advance or previous decline is always uh, a marker that you want to look at, and we're there.
Hmm.
We're right there. We made the high here, we had the false break, came down, found support on the half square. Now we've bounced up into the full square. So now we're going to see what each side has. My gut tells me that, as you know, you can go plus or minus an eighth either way, and it's still, sort of the zone. So
Hmm.
do we push up into this eighth? Probably. If we get some decent news and we keep rallying, and that would go right into the, these lows here and these lows here. So there's good structure there.
Right.
So let's allow for that. We'll watch the full square, see how it holds, and if it does, then we know what to do.
Hmm.
So that's the one look there. Let's take a couple other looks. Let's look at the weekly. You can see the weekly. We've got an inside bar here this week,
Yeah.
and we're pushing up towards the full square. And on the weekly, it's at like 18,180. That would be the spot where we want to see what happens,
Hmm.
see how it reacts. Let's look at the monthly. The monthly, we have a down bar, a significant down bar, it's pretty strong reversal, but we're pushing back up and we're basically at the lows of the previous month.
Yeah.
So we have 2 trading days left, believe it or not, in April. We'll see what happens and where this bar ends up. If we close below last month's low, that would be fairly significant. Much more significant on the ES because it would give us an outside reversal. But here it's just, hey, we couldn't close back in the range of the previous
Hmm.
month. The other thing I wanted to show here was, and we haven't looked at this one before, is a calendar day.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing on this, when I was looking at it, caught the high pretty well. This is a square of 60, but from the higher low, not the low in 2022, but the higher low.
Hmm.
And the 60 is vibrating pretty well. It caught the high. The interesting thing, look, it's jumped back up, and now it may try to ride this one by one if we're going
Hmm.
to keep rallying. If we get stuck below, and then this half square, that's the big turning point here for the monthly.
Right.
So we'll see. For now, we're looking like we have an up bar, unless we have some sort of major collapse in the next two
Hmm.
days. Looks like we have an up bar. Now we want to see, do we ride this one by one, or do we get stuck under it and lose it? Anything else to add on the NQs? It's pretty simple. I mean, as you said, it's
Yeah.
very similar to ES in that we pulled back a square and now we've rallied back up half a square and we're at a decision point.
Yeah. Yeah. No, not much to add. They're all kind of doing something similar. So,
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
mhm.
This one's let's look at Bitcoin now. We look Bitcoin. It's not acting as strong as I would have thought it would have been once we completed this ABCD and got that
Hmm.
reaction.
Hmm.
It's kind of rolling over again. Like we came back up, couldn't get back into the triangle, just sort of back kissed it, and now we're, getting stuck here below this full square.
Hmm.
To me, that 64,800 area, it's got to get above that, or it's vulnerable.
Yeah.
And as you've discussed many times, if we come down and take out the ABCD lows, that should really get things going to the downside.
Yeah.
So the first marker is we want to see, can we get above this full square, or do we continue to get stuck under it like we have for the last couple days? And then after that, it's this half square, and
Hmm.
that's at 60,330. If we get below that, then we got to trip down to here.
Yeah.
First here, but there's, you can see there was not a lot there. We just went straight through it.
Hmm.
So the next sort of ledge is going to be down here around
50,
50,
51.
51. Yeah,
Mhm.
50, 51. So we'll watch it. I don't think the verdict is out yet. It's just it's a little disappointing that we didn't get a better bounce off of that ABCD. So we'll see.
Yeah.
On commodity side, the big event this week, and I posted something on X, I think it was on Monday, was the grains all of a sudden caught a bid and money started coming into them.
Hmm.
So we're going to look at wheat and corn today. Soybeans is still going sideways, but it'll get dragged along if these others keep going. But we'll look at wheat and corn, coffee, and then silver. So let's start with wheat. So here's what I mean, where it just took off early in the
Yeah,
week.
yeah.
We had this big bar, but that was under this full square, right? So
And
you
sometimes
were,
they need that, they need that kind of a push to
and
get
it
through with that
certainly
kind of
did.
overhead.
But every single day, right? We had this big up bar, then we had an inside bar, and then up, 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 up all
Mhm.
week. Just pushed all week. And what did it give us? Well, first thing it did was it gave us a higher low here, right? Coming into this.
Mhm.
Then we took out this previous high. So now we have a higher high and a higher low, which
Yeah.
is the definition of an uptrend. So now
Mhm.
we're starting to move. The other thing, the key is we've cleared the full square here, which was holding it back since, you could call it February when we started slipping below it. So we've cleared that and we're pushing.
Mhm.
The next upside resistance is going to be this half square around 652. On any pullbacks, we definitely want to hold above this full square.
Mhm.
But this is now bullish, and I mean, when was the last time you saw a move like this? Here would probably be right November,
Yeah.
December. And then
It's a
before
good
that,
start because we had
July.
new lows come in.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. So this looks to be on the bullish side. Now we want to watch any pullbacks to be able to get involved. We've successfully taken out some resistance. If we clear this, I mean, look at how much is below that.
mhm.
It's a full year of price action, baby.
Yes.
Except for June, July last year.
Mhm.
So that's going to be big. But this perked up this week. I put something out. Now we know, look for entries if you're not already in. All right, let's check out the weekly, and you can see what a week it was. Biggest weekly bar in a long time since last June, July.
Yeah. Looks good.
Yeah. And the other thing to notice here, look at this low, Barry, last week, right on the half square.
Right on the square. Yep.
And so it used that as support. And then this week we pushed.
This week, everybody got the memo.
But this is how you use the squares, right? We
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
down,
Absolutely.
pushed up, the pullback on a weekly basis held above. As soon as this high was taken out, it was
Mhm.
off to the races. That's the weekly. Let's take a quick
And the
look at
beauty
the
of the other part is how it stalled out at the 50%, for how many weeks?
let's see.
Started
One,
making those
two,
higher lows
three,
and
four.
eventually just
Yeah.
sat.
Yep. Yeah. It's there. Let's take a look at the monthly. What do we have to show in the monthly? We have a monthly close over the half square.
Reversal.
And
Yeah.
and that's big, right? Yeah, we
Yeah.
reversed this month. Barring any dramatic weakness, Monday, Tuesday, we'll get a close over this half square, and then that opens up the full square. The other thing to look at, why is this important? Look at that line and look left.
Hmm.
Look at all that price action from 2015, 14 and 15, all the way to 2020, 21. It
Mm.
was under there. So sitting on top of that is big. And if you want to go back before the Russian invasion, look at what happened when we cleared this half square. This is right here. You could say it was here or here, but either one of those. Look at the price action you got after that.
Yeah. Right.
So it's a pretty significant spot. We'll watch it in the next couple trading days, see if we get a close over, and then the new bar can stay above that. It could be a launching pad for wheat. Anything to add before we jump over to corn?
No, this is good. Beautiful.
Yeah, nice
Let's just
start.
follow. Keep an eye on it.
I mean, and this is what we're waiting for, right? We call out the low, then we get this type of price action. And then to know that this type of price action is done, you want to see this kind of move, right? Where you take out the previous high off of the low, and you get this kind of vertical move. Money's wanting to be in. We don't know the news yet, and the news is probably going to come out that there's some issue with supply or the crop or weather or something,
Right.
and that's what people are reacting to right now. All right, let's take a look at corn. Corn perked up last 3 4 days. It hasn't been as dramatic as wheat, but if you look, we cleared a
Yeah,
half square
for sure.
and we made a higher high.
Yep.
Here's the low, which we called out ABCD down into the low, just like we did an ABCD down into the wheat low. Pushed up, made a first high, couldn't clear the half square. Here's your pullback. It was basically sideways. And now we've made a higher high, and the lows are sitting on top of those highs, and importantly, on top of the half square. So the next thing we're going to do, I assume, is we're going to push up and we're going to challenge this downtrend line from the highs from the Russian invasion and the highs that we saw in early 23.
Mm-hmm.
And then we push through that. The big thing to know we're really rolling again is clearing this full square.
Right.
499. Call it
Mm-hmm.
500. 500, 499. You clear that, all this will be below us.
Right.
And that'll be the turn. But the turn is coming and the turn is there. We've got the higher high and the higher low, which is a signature of an uptrend. So trade it accordingly. Let's look at the weekly. Anything you want to add here on the daily before I switch over to the weekly?
Now we're good, and I think it's great that you're catching it this early.
Mm-hmm.
So let's follow through.
Yeah, let's look at the weekly. So what do we have on the weekly? Well, we've got a higher high, got a high, higher low, higher high.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're dealing with this trend line here. So next week, let's see if we can, continue the rally and push through. If we can push through that downtrend line, then the weekly can start rolling as well and
Mm-hmm.
support the daily. Let's also look at the monthly. And what I want to show you here on the monthly. Interesting. I was looking at the number of months the declines were off of these major peaks.
Mm-hmm.
The shortest one was 15. The biggest one was 26. We did 22 high to low here.
Wow.
And so we're in this range. The other thing that interesting is that we were coming down first on a 8x1, 4x1. But the main one was the 2x1 was most of this decline was capturing
Mm-hmm.
this 2x1.
Right. Right.
Next week bar, if we just open, don't have to make or next month, I'm sorry, in the next 2 days, the next month's bar, we don't have to make huge progress. We're going to escape this 2x1.
Mm-hmm.
And that opens up the path to the 1x1. So everything's kind of lining up. As you can see, it's a little less further along than wheat,
Mm-hmm.
but everything's lining up for this one as well. Soybeans, on the other hand, we're not going to cover it, but that's one that it's even further behind. It's still sideways. We're still waiting for that higher high on the daily. We have a higher low, but we don't have the higher high yet, so it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of still going sideways. But I like the way the setup is for corn. The daily is in position. The weekly is in position because we have the higher high and the higher low. And now we're just waiting for the monthly to kick in and the momentum to kick in here now that we're on top of this half square.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else to add on this one?
No, we're good. We're good to go.
All right, let's go to one of the softs. Interestingly enough, I told the story on Twitter briefly. I was in the gym and I never watched CNBC, but it was on the TV, so I was watching it.
Uh-huh.
And they had a segment on cocoa, like a feature segment on cocoa this
Mm-hmm.
past week. And all I could think of was, oh my God, they're finally going to put a top in on cocoa because they're drawing in the last buyers, right? The retail
Right.
last buyers. And the next day it was down like 8% at one point. It bounced back, but it's chopping around now near the high.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, even um, we had the first weekly inside bar in cocoa. You can go check it since February 17th, the week of February 17th. Every other bar's been an up bar.
Right.
and we got an inside bar this past week. So that monster may finally be slowing down. But
Mm-hmm.
let's go. We're going to talk about coffee. I just can't stop talking about cocoa because it's amazing. All right, coffee. This is one where we were tracking the lows into
Mm-hmm.
this low here. Uh, and recently we picked this up on this last push up, right? Because we had this high, then we had a pullback, gave us a higher low. And then once we started moving here and recaptured this half square, we said, hey, it's time to pay attention here. Got to push up a lot like the gold and the silver that we talked about, right? It pushed up into an ABC, into resistance, and now we've been seeing this pullback and this correction here. This if this is where the correction stops, where we stay on top of this half square, look how bullish that is.
Right. That's very bullish.
I mean, going back to the fall of 22, prices would be above all the prices since then.
Mm.
So that would be a really bullish correction. So while we track them into the lows and then trying to help you figure out a good place to get in, once you get this first pullback, this is critical because this is when the bigger time frames can kick in, when you get the corrections that remain bullish. So I feel like coffee is one of those, and you'll see when you look at the weekly and the monthly why.
Mm-hmm.
Here's your weekly. So
Yep.
you can see why we got stuck, right?
Yep.
We had time and price pretty much on a weekly basis. But look what happened on the pullback so far. We're holding this half square. Remember, this thing can come all the way down here, and look how super bullish it would still be
Yeah.
because you're going to be sitting on top of this entire structure from, October of 22 to April of this year. So we're going to let it, you can see it's a weekly inside bar. Maybe it does another couple inside bars and just triangulates here like it did here before the next move. As long as we stay above that half square, this is super, super bullish. So the weekly is correcting, and we see why. Let's take a look at the monthly. Monthly, the key level for us, got to stay above that half square.
Yep.
This is a big up bar. The next bar probably going to be inside, if we correct off. But the key thing is, man, look at what happens when we clear that.
Yeah.
Because that's the next level it's going to challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Then we're going back to prices all the way back to 2011 and 2012 will be below us
Mm-hmm.
if we can sit up on top of this full square. That's the potential of coffee. Not saying, guaranteed it's going to do that or it's 100% or anything, but that's the potential you're looking at with the higher time frames potentially supporting the daily, you know, from a multi-year base. Anything else you want to point out on coffee? I know you've been bullish as well as I have, and like
Yeah. I
like
think
like
just
the
be
chart.
patient through the correction and get back on it.
Yeah. Yep. And speaking of being patient and waiting to get back on it, let's talk about silver because silver is in the same boat. This doesn't look too dissimilar to the coffee chart, does it?
Nope. Nope.
But look at where the pullback is so far, right? So we had the low, made a higher low, pushed up, failed at the full square, came back another higher low, right?
Mm-hmm.
See, one, two, three. And then here's where we get the takeoff. The key here, and you'll see it on the larger time frames, but you can see it here. As long as we stay on top of this full square,
Mm-hmm.
we're sitting on top of all of that price action.
Yeah.
And so let's see what happens. It may just chop around and go sideways. It may do a clean out move, but we really want to watch this because this thrust breaking out was really important, and you'll see
Mm-hmm.
why. Let's look at the weekly. Here's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the key level that for the weekly. Now remember, it can come back down to here and still be bullish, and that may be the clean out move it does. But when it clears and stays on top of this 2746, it's on top of all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's super bullish. If it goes sideways here for a while, What other commodity recently did that for a long time, like about a year and a half, Barry? Gold, remember?
Yeah, yeah.
It was going sideways at the highs on the bigger time frames. So, we've got a down bar this week. Next, or this is the weekly, yeah. So that we got a down bar this week. Let's see what happens next week. Maybe we get another inside, we get an inside bar or some sort of thing. We want to see this 27.48, 27.50 area.
Mm.
See that price stay on top of that, and I think we're in really, really good shape with silver. What do you think about silver at this spot?
I think it's a good spot. If we, just like you said, if we can hold that square, it's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll watch it. We'll watch it and see. The crude oil berry covered. Nat gas is continuing to go sideways. We had a spike up earlier. I still want to see us, get a higher high to go along with these higher lows. So that I'm waiting on that for nat gas. Copper, as Barry covered, is very bullish. That one looks good. The topic I wanted to cover today, Barry,
Mhm.
a lot of people are interested in the squares because we feature the squares prominently in our work. When a square is working versus having to shift the square around, what are the things you look at? And I'm going to give the chart back to you because I want you to walk people through this because I think it's important. When you're finding a fit of a square, you put a square on. When do you move it? When do you change it? What are the things you're looking at that drive you to say, okay, this vibration's not working anymore. Let me find another one.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I see the
Yeah.
E-mini.
So the question is, when do we switch squares? Is that it?
Yeah. When do you start like saying, okay, it's time for me to look and see what else is going on in this market, as opposed to, hey, this square's working, I'll just stick with it.
Hmm. And I think this idea is probably what makes people go crazy about with Gann and splits,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yep.
know?
Right.
Whereas the indicator or trend line, you can just leave it in there. Everything's just makes sense and things just move through.
Because it's static, right? Those points don't move
Right.
when you're talking about trend lines.
Mhm. So, I mean, first of all, you have to know how a square works. It's basically, I mean, without getting into all the divisions, let's just say you take a 360. Well, instead of talking, how about we look at it?
Mm-hmm.
So let me move this to the low here, like that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is this chart okay, or should I make a?
No, that's a good
This
one.
is fine, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing is, I mean, these divisions are the main thing. And what are we dividing? We're dividing the circle. So here's a 360, and this would be the full circle squared out at this scale. So here is 360, 360 in time, and up here would be 360 in price and time, and that.
Right.
So what we do is we take the 360 and we look at different divisions. So it's really about the divisions, right? So if we take it
It's where you
and
get your 90s, your
that's where we get our 90s.
45s,
Mm-hmm.
60s, 30s.
Exactly. So we can take the 90 and now we know, we just divided the square by 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, squares are such that depending on the scale and how you're using it, they're all very flexible. But once you have the square, 90 and a 360, 180, they're all sort of fractalized.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you have it for the proper scale, let's say, well, I mean, here, look, you can see the 90 working just fine, right? And when I say, well, what is it that you're working fine? Working fine means the lines are holding, the 50% is holding on pullbacks or
Like the full square line and the half square line.
mm-hmm. and
Right.
and they're and support and resistance working within the square, which is the idea. You want, and these squares, when they start moving through one, like once we clear 90, for example, we went up half square, corrected back to the 90, went back up to the half, we cleared the half, rallied right into the next square. What happened at the
Mm-hmm.
next square? We corrected and rallied right up to the half square. So you
And
can see
that's
how
it right there. That's a definition of a square that's working.
that that's right. So that's how you know it's working, because it's stair stepping and moving perfectly in within the square.
And there
Now,
are decisions being made at the important points, which are the full square and the half square.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
You can see that the price, there's a battle there between the sort of the different forces in the market.
exactly. So now, so you can do it that way. I mean, that's divided by 4. And if you take a 5, you have the 72, right? And if you take a look at that, what do you see? Uh, you see something similar. We get up to the 72. It's not as clean, but it stopped. We checked back at the 72 before we went back up
Mhm.
to 144, came back to 108, hung around there, and went up to 216, took it out by a little bit, and came back down. So the thing is, once you have so if you were to look at both, what would you pick? What is it? Is it going to be the 90? Is that the one to wear? And at which point do you choose that? You know what I mean? And here's the 72.
This is where it becomes a bit of an art and not just
Yeah, and here's the
math.
60. Yeah, 60. I'm not going to get into 60 and everything else because everything's contained
They're
within,
derivatives. Yeah.
yeah, 90 and the 72. 72 is really the 144, right?
Yep.
144 holes, divisions of 144 holes, holds everything else, and it's all very close together. So the key numbers all sort of stack nicely. If you do, take your, I don't really don't have time to do all of it, but basically if you take all the divisions of 144 and you look at the divisions of 90, and you'll see how they line up.
Mhm.
So what I do is I look to, I would look, and also the market that's running on a certain square, like let's say this is running on a 90 pretty well. I would continue to do that till I see some kind of a disturbance or a shift in the cycle. And the way that happens is we might go through it a little bit more, like here, right? Instead of stopping up there, we might go through a little bit, or there might
That's
be.
the key. That's the key, right? Where the market violates that full square or that half square enough times or far enough,
Mhm.
and then reacts that you say, hey, there's a different vibration in here now.
Exactly. And I think
Mhm.
we talked about this a little bit when we were doing Tesla stock the other day. And you
Right?
see how Tesla like often switches the vibe. It might go on a run on a 90, meaning it'll vibrate through a 90 really well, meaning move through. And then all of a sudden it's running on a 72. And all of a sudden back at a 90 or a 60 or something like that. So that's where, then, people might get too excited and it's like, oh my God, how can I trust this? It's always changing. But if you understand the divisions and how, you have to, that's the reason I started with the 360s. You need to understand that's the base, right? We're taking 360. And if you understand how the divisions work, then there's no reason to panic because everything lines up and everything um, sort of structures the market, So what this is doing is all these points are structuring the market. It'll provide resistance. Once it breaks out, now we got resistance. It gets above, now we have support. Right after resistance again, came down, support. So that's all we do every week. We're just looking to see where is the market now in relation to the square that is running. So really the shifting comes when I see something being a little bit off. Like let's say I was running, well, we don't want to get to the end. Like let's say, I mean, here I remember I was running a 72 here. I remember that. So you can see how 72 went up to 72 by 36, corrected, did a false break. And I remember calling that out. Hey, we have a false break, Mike. And it went back down to the 36, right? It held here. So far, you can trade with this and manage your risk just fine. Consolidated and rallied. Okay, so instead of stopping at 72, where did we go? Just a little higher, right?
Hmm.
And so at that point, I'm looking at this and say, well, if it'd been a little higher, we should hold here and rally. We should get to the fat 50% or for the full square. Well, what happened? We couldn't hold there and we broke through a little bit. We started breaking. Okay.
Hmm.
So that's a little odd. That's a very odd behavior for, if you're trading square. So then I pop up the 90 and say, well, what's happening here? Well,
Ah, that
Um,
tells a better story.
yeah, it tells you, well, we actually kind of squared out,
Mm.
especially if we move the square to the lower high that I was using. Remember, I called this a sort of phantom low, and we were trading off of this for a while, right? So if you do that, we went 90 in time. See that? And if you go to the phantom one, we pretty much did 90 degrees up. So now I'm watching both. Okay. Are we going to get above the 90 or not? Because if the 72 holds, then we should certainly get above the 90, right? So at that point, you kind of know intuitively, well, you know what? We ran that square out. We did an ABCD right into a 90, even though it might be just 88, it's close enough. You want to give it plus or minus 2 degrees.
Hmm.
And then we corrected. So then on the correction, you're watching to see, well, where is the correction going? Well, it stopped exactly at the
At the
45,
45. Yeah.
right? So right soon as it took out that 72 that we had earlier, that's when I'm first saying, hey, it could be shifting. That's how
Hmm.
you know. And then
Hmm.
I put on the 90, and then I watched to see how price responds to that. So here's the 72. So clearly we were up there. We should go, but it didn't. At that point, I'm checking, well, was that the 90? Because after 72, the next one's 90. So
Hmm.
if it blows through, 90 is the next one. So we come back, and we, if you even if you watch this, you can see even though we bounced here, we quite didn't get to the 50%. And you can see how perfectly it worked on the 90, you know. And then the other proof was when we got back up there, we were sitting right on top of the 90, a nice little triangle breaking to the upside, broke to the upside, next 50%. See that? You know,
I think this is great, Barry. And you know what? Maybe each show, because we could do an entire hour or two on this stuff, you know?
yeah, I
Uh,
mean, thing is, this is where you want to do like a course and get all the pieces in one place instead of
yeah.
sort of piecemealing it. But if you guys want to watch it every week, I think if people watch it every week,
They'll pick it up.
they'll pick up everything.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's really a thing to do like in a one sitting, like the one, like a couple of day workshop. So
Yeah. No,
no,
but
because
this,
it's not that easy. I can explain
no.
it like that, but actually doing it in real time when you have real money,
Oh,
real
man.
goods in play, how do we know? How do we know what to do?
And you have to, the one thing I'd say working with the squares is it's not certain. You got to be you got to be comfortable with the uncertainty, right?
Yes.
Because you're putting the vibration on, you're watching to see how it goes, and then based on, like Barry just showed you, do you get the hits at the important spots, the half square, the full square? Do things change? Once you start seeing that and get a feel for it, then you're comfortable. You can eyeball it when you put it on and say, okay, this looks like a good vibration. And then you know when it stops working because it starts getting beyond those levels too far to say, okay, this is reasonable. It's still working.
Hmm.
But I thought at least just to explore that because I know a lot of people are interested in the squares and are trying them, and this might be helpful.
Well, the other thing is you just don't pop in a square in the middle of everything and pretend you
Right.
don't know everything. You have to start somewhere. And that's why Gann talked about back testing a lot. Go back in history, do the old contracts, go back in a stock and forward test it. So when you do that, you see how the phases shift. The phase shifts are very clear. And the more you do. I mean, I started trading doing hand charts, and so it was a very slow process before, got into sort of automated um, overlays.
Yeah.
And by doing that, what you learn is you see when it shifts, you kind of see the price pattern, you see how the character of the market shifts a little bit, and it's a little bit more, it's a little nuanced. So you have to really be watching the price action very closely. Like when we're talking, on our weekly thing, we don't talk about every bar and every little nuanced corner. We're talking in terms of the bigger picture, right? We're talking about
Hmm.
the main squares, 50%, and how price is responding, behaving around there. So there's a lot more that goes in, but a lot of it comes through experience and putting that knowledge, into practice, and then you'll pick up because every market has different characters. And so to round off this, what I wanted to say was you don't just put a square in the middle. What you want to do is you want to go back as far as you can and you walk it forward a few years,
Yep.
and see, oh, well, what is it trading mostly? So you have an insight. Well, this market shifts like Tesla, we saw right away, it shifts a lot. So then you're
Yeah.
watching both. But most stocks don't. If something's trading on a 90, it'll trade on a 90 for years.
Mhm.
And some stocks will, like a Hang Seng is on a 72. It hasn't changed.
Right.
So mostly they stay the same. And if they change a little bit, you just flow with it.
Well,
So
great show,
does that help?
Barry. Really, really appreciate all the information you're providing and the analysis. And if you all appreciate what we're doing, please like the videos, share them, subscribe to the channel. We're trying to grow the channel this year, so we
Mhm.
appreciate all your support that way. And we'll
And
talk with you next week.
all right, good show,
Great.
Ben. Thanks.
Thanks,
Uh-huh.
Barry. Take
All right.
care, everybody.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.